Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We've got a brand new interview from Palantir's CTO, Chief Technology Officer, Shyam Sankar. Now, this was one of the most interesting interviews I've seen in a while, in particular because this podcast that he did was very technical, meaning he's not talking too much about like building Palantir and the business and all that stuff. He's talking a lot more about the actual technology that they've been developing for the past 20 years and why the development of that technology for the last 20 years has put them in a prime position to be able to capitalize on what's going to happen for the next 20 years. So this podcast was really important and special just on the fact that I've never heard him get as technical as he got here. Jorgen Thoughts, great account on Twitter. Highly recommend following them, especially if you're interested in Palantir content. Just awesome Palantir clips that they post and Palantir analysis. He clips out 3 minutes from the No Priors podcast that Shyam just did. And in these 3 minutes, Shyam explains why an ontology is important to get good, accurate results out of an LLM without changing the model itself, which means faster time to value. Now, LLMs are large language models. ChatGPT revolutionized the world because you can type in an answer and then a large language model uses AI, billions of data points, and then spits out some results literally within milliseconds. And then boom, you can be more productive. There's more time to value for what you're trying to do. Implementing LLMs into the enterprise, the commercial space, is a massive opportunity. And every single business right now sees how they could accelerate the speed of growth, efficiencies, productivity, etc., if they had some sort of a large language model. In order to implement a large language model, you need 2 things. Number 1, you need data. So you have to have some level of proprietary data in your organization that is valuable if you were able to import it into an LLM. Most organizations have that. And then most importantly, after that, you need the second part, which is the AI infrastructure, the tooling that allows the LLM to even be productive in the first place. And this is the massive opportunity right now for Palantir in the AI space, because if they can be the de facto AI infrastructure company for everyone who's even thinking of implementing an LLM, which are going to be millions of companies over the next decades, then if Palantir is the first one you call, there is a big, massive opportunity there. So I want to play a clip of Shyam talking. We're going to let him talk for about 1:50 and discuss why it is so important that Palantir has been developing what they've done over the past 20 years. And then we'll go a little bit more deeper into some of the things he says about the relationship between an ontology, which we've heard many times in the Palantir community, and a large language model.
At what point did you decide you wanted to make a big investment in LLMs, and sort of what did the company do first?
I think it was really around Q4, the last part of the last year there, where it just felt like, obviously the LLMs are exciting, but what was more exciting to us is it felt like the LLMs were just waiting for something like ontology. It's like to really get the value out of the LLM, the way that we had modeled the world. It's almost like accidentally we had spent the last 20 years really thinking hard about dynamic ontologies, how you model them, why they're valuable to humans. And you can kind of think about the ontology as having this semantic layer that gives you an incredible amount of compression that you're putting into the context window and allows you to build LLM-backed functions in very reliable ways. And I think part of this is just like recognizing the LLMs, it's more like statistics and calculus. And I think this is one of the impedance mismatches for a lot of engineers who are working on them. They're kind of like, they model them a little bit like calculus, a lot like calculus. And then, when it works magically. And when it doesn't work, it falls off a cliff. So how are you actually going to get this to work when you kind of have this like stochastic genie now? I think you're going to need a kind of a whole tool chain around that kind of presupposes it's a stochastic genie.
So this right here was really interesting. First of all, what is the stochastic genie? Right here, stochastic means randomly determined, having a random probability distribution or pattern that may be analyzed statistically, but not predicted precisely. So when Shyam is saying an LLM is essentially a stochastic genie, he's saying that, look, a genie can grant you any wish you want, but the problem is if the genie grants you a wish and it's giving you random wishes, the context that is there in order for that wish to be meaningful, if you wish for a new house and you get a new shirt, it's like, well, you got something, but it wasn't the thing you wanted because it was all based on random chance. And the biggest problems we're seeing in ChatGPT and Bard is the level of hallucinations that are going on. I was using Bard the other day and it hallucinated a random number to me that I knew for a fact was false, but it sounded like it was so correct. And these things can't exist in an enterprise. In an enterprise, you need to be able to get not only the most accurate data, but like the data that informs the decision has to be accurate, or there can be massive business downside. If you say, hey, how many inventory do we have of the XYZ part? And they say, oh, you have 50,000, you're good for the next 3 months. And then you had 20,000 and now you have a supply shortage. Like that can have a really bad impact on the bottom line for the business. So what Shyam is saying here, which is the exciting part about this interview, is he said by Q4 2022, when we had realized what LLMs were going to become as a company, it was the most exciting thing in the world because we had spent 20 years building up to this moment. It's like there are certain things where a market and an opportunity and timing all happen at the same time, and it results in like the most amazing products and services in the world. But all three of those things have to happen at the same time. And the ChatGPT moment that happened in early 2023 was the moment where Palantir realized the thing that makes LLMs matter, the thing that makes LLMs so exciting and special and revolutionary and changes the world is the ontology. What is the ontology? The ontology is how Palantir has thought philosophically and from a product perspective around data for the past 20 years, which is how can an organization structure their data, whether it's structured or unstructured, whether it's siloed or not, bring it into a container, into an ontology, a common foundation of truth, and then be able to derive business value from that. That is the core concept of an ontology. If you've never heard it before, it's just your data in one place. That data derives value, and that value then exceeds for the business to do many different things. This means predictive modeling. This means simulations. This means time series forecasting. There are so many different things you can do if you have an ontology. One of the hard things to do, especially if you're a big enterprise, is actually figure out how to develop the tooling and the infrastructure to have an ontology in the first place. And then you can have a conversation about AI and LLMs and potentially AIP into the organization. But if you don't have an ontology, there is no chance. And so the interesting thing about Sham is he's basically revealing that Palantir saw this as a massive opportunity once LLM started becoming mainstream for them to capitalize on that. And we see within less than 3 months, AIP is out there in the world. We're having a second conference. We already had the first conference in September, and we're going to see kind of where they can grow and take this even further.
And I think the ontology is one of these things that massively grounds your LLM in your reality, in your business context, and allows you to manage that without having to, change the model itself.
What are some of those components that you think are the tool chain that you need to sort of bottle the stochastic genie? And I love that phrase, by the way. I think it's a really good way to put it.
So you're probably going to need everything you kind of need with the dev tool chain, but you're going to have to adjust it for the fact that it's stochastic. So you even see like people call it eval and not unit tests, but you're going to need like, how many unit tests do you need? If you're going to write an LLM backed function and it's a stochastic genie, how many times does it need to execute before you have confidence that it's going to do what you want? And then you can think about that. That's like day zero. Okay, so I build this thing. How do I think about it? But what sort of telemetry and production log data do I need? And how often am I going to be looking at those traces? And it's like, I might even be writing unit tests against my traces. I guess you could call that like a health check, right? And like, there's going to be a lot more emphasis that you're going to need there as an engineer as you think about using this. And then there's going to have to be some calibration on the use case. The best use case is going to be one when the LLM gets it right, there's massive upside. And when it doesn't, it's a no op, right? And so picking those ones, I think, are going to be quite important as you build and tune the specific applications of these.
Going back to this idea of an ontology, I feel like I suddenly understand this much better in that there are a lot of companies right now trying to figure out how to take all of their messy, less than perfectly integrated and largely unstructured data and create some sort of intermediate representation that the models can handle well. And if you have something like an existing ontology of your business, then leveraging it with LLMs does feel like a really natural, magical fit.
The interesting thing there is Sham saying what grounds the LLM in the context of the reality of your organization. It's an ontology. What does that mean? That means your organization has a particular worldview. There's a million different variables that influence that worldview. Facebook's worldview is going to be different from Google's worldview. And for the employees in that business to understand the worldview of the company and then do things based on that, order supplies, create new marketing campaigns, hire new people for the business, you have to have an understanding of the business. And so this like massive gold rush of an LLM that can transform a business and make it 10,000 times more productive than it was before the LLM doesn't matter, is functionally irrelevant unless you have an ontology that grounds the LLM in the context of the reality of your business. Because we know, given we have ChatGPT and Bard, that if the LLM isn't grounded in any reality, it can spit out nonsense. And if it spits out nonsense, not only does it make you less productive, it makes you not productive at all, counterproductive if you're not ordering the right amount of inventory or you're hiring the wrong people because this thing gave you the wrong answers. much less if it's actually autonomously taking actions and autonomously ordering inventory itself and it's doing it the wrong way. I mean, like, it can get really bad for a business to the point where the business wouldn't even use it in the first place. And so what I think ushers in this massive sort of $4.4 trillion market opportunity that Bloomberg said by 2033 in terms of enterprise AI spend is the tooling infrastructure combined with the ontology infrastructure, the ontology tooling, together in an organization that leads to the business results that ultimately a government agency, an NGO, and a commercial enterprise would want to be able to say that their organization is more effective than it was before. You need both things. And I think this is what Palantir is trying to get across to most companies, which is like, you can't do AI, LLMs, all this amazing fancy stuff unless you have an ontology. And if you don't have an ontology, there is no chance for an LLM to have any context to be able to give you the results you want. So it's useless to even think of implementing an LLM if you haven't structured your data in the first place. And so what I think we are going into is essentially a world in which most enterprises around the planet are realizing, and enterprises could be commercial or they could just be hospitals, they could be a variety of institutions that are realizing we've got the juice. We need to be able to figure out how to drink it. We've got massive amounts of data that can accelerate our organization, which is why there's this $4.4 trillion spend, because GDP in and of itself will be pushed higher as a result of top line growth, because companies will be more productive, will be more effective. I am becoming more productive and effective every day because of using something like ChatGPT. So imagine me multiplied by billions of people across the world within organizations using these types of AI-based applications to accelerate their productivity. Like, it's a massive opportunity, and Palantir recognizes that they could be the back-end software for every company in the world, theoretically, in order to be able to accelerate that efficiency. But the question becomes, do you have an ontology? Do you have an LLM that is grounded within that ontology? And do you even have the mindset as an organization to want to structure your data in a way that is the right way to get those results? And that's where Palantir's challenge is like, can they convince all these enterprises that this is what you got to do? Either they're going to be able to do it and sales and marketing will increase and they're going to be able to close more deals, or they won't. But that is the opportunity. The opportunity is very clear. And I think Sham in this interview put it in very clear light. Like, you cannot have this without this. We provide you both. If you want to have a conversation, this is what the conversation is going to look like. And if you want to actually take action on it, this is what you're going to have to do to be able to implement it at a greater scale. So overall, I think it was a really good interview, really good technical stuff. Link the full interview in the description so you can check it out and kind of see for yourself exactly what Sham was talking about. But it makes a lot of sense in the context of ontologies and LLMs. And this is a big, big world we're getting into. We're in the infancy of it. Like, this is kind of the first couple of years of even getting into a world where everyone knows what an ontology and LLM and what these AI tooling infrastructure applications look like. And so there's a lot more to discuss as we go forward. Thank you guys so much for listening, watching. Let me know your thoughts on Sham's new podcast, and I'll see you on the next one.